Welcome to Bare Bones. With your host, Dr. Mason West.
Welcome into this episode of Bare Bones. As always, I am Mason West, and today I am joined by the great Jacob Infante. Jacob, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Wish that we're coming off of a better Bears game to talk about, but yeah, I'm doing all right, all things considered.
Yeah, really, what, halftime, third quarter? Actually, I'm not going to say third quarter. Halftime, I felt that it was like, all right, cool, get to march it out of there with a week one victory. And then you got to do the post-game show, so that was either terrible or cathartic for you. I'm not sure which. I remember when I was doing those last year, it was usually a combination of both.
Yeah.
So we're going to get right into it. First part of this chart review, just a couple of quotes, notes, pieces of news from the week. Some of them are from the press conferences, things like that. And we'll share our thoughts before we get rolling into it. First one, Ben Johnson on Caleb Williams being receptive on the sideline and after Monday night's loss. Ben said, very positive. He's been consistent from springtime to preseason to now. I think we're really good in terms of cleaning up the mistakes and moving forward. Now, obviously, you're not going to lambaste your quarterback if you really felt he was terrible or not receptive. But at the same time, Ben's been pretty upfront about how he feels about things. So, I like hearing that in terms of what he felt about Caleb on the sideline and following that loss.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that, and that's a big thing too, is obviously Caleb Williams is a very talented passer. It's just a matter of can it all come together? Can it gel well in the offense? And obviously there are some hiccups here and there, especially in the second half. But I think that especially for a young quarterback, the most important thing is, are you coachable? Can we teach you these things and then you pick them up? And I think that that's something that, if it's true, and assuming that it is what Ben Johnson said about Caleb being receptive to feedback and, improvement and stuff like that, then that's definitely encouraging, because this early in the game, you don't know everything. I mean, even as a longtime quarterback, you don't necessarily know everything. So I think you need to prove that you're able to be coached. You need to prove that you're able to be worked with. And I think that if Ben Johnson's saying that about Caleb Williams, then, it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, in terms of how, relating to this upcoming game against the Lions, which is what we're primarily doing here, right? This Lions defense did not look great last week taking on the Packers. They allowed 27 points. And in a way, 17 of those points by the Packers was in the first half. Seemed like they took the foot off the gas pedal a little bit. So one could make the argument that this Lions defense can be had, but you're only going to be able to do that if you're able to learn from that previous week. Looking ahead, Ben Johnson also said that in terms of Kyle Monangai's usage going forward, I need to call more runs. It's a longer quote, but that essentially is how we boil down to it. Monangai only had 9 snaps, 0 carries. Bears as a whole had 20 carries that were not Caleb Williams. That totaled 61 yards. Caleb had 58 of his own. 11 of those carries were in the first half and 7 in the third quarter. And that they had the Bears had 9 minutes and 12 seconds of possession compared to the Vikings at 5:48. So, and this is looking ahead again to this Lions game in terms of how are you going to use the run versus the pass. Why didn't they ultimately run more with the lead? And do you expect this to potentially change, especially with Ben Johnson's comments going into week 2?
Yeah. So truthfully, I'm not 100% sure why he didn't rely more on, the run game, especially when you're up by multiple scores. I think part of it is maybe trying to overcompensate. Like, hey, we want to make sure that we're putting the foot on the, on the gas pedal, making sure that we're not playing too passive, which, I understand and I appreciate, but at the same time too, it definitely would have been more beneficial to run the ball a little bit more, especially once Caleb started having accuracy issues. Particularly when they had him under center and he was, on play action or just, straight dropbacks. Some of that footwork kind of tended to fall apart, and then he didn't necessarily hit targets and stride on a consistent basis like that. So I think that it's definitely something to keep in mind in the second half if the Bears do, get out to a similar lead against the Lions or in future games. That, hey, you can't just go run for all 3 downs, but at the same time, I feel like it's natural to prefer the run when you're up by that much because you want to bleed out the clock and make it as tough as possible for the opposing offense. So I do expect that Ben Johnson adjusts and, in some shape or fashion, makes that change.
Yeah, and Lester Wolfong did an article talking about how you don't need the run to set up play action, which is true. That the stats support that. I do think that the run does other things, though, right? Mentally, for an offensive lineman, it's big being able to attack, go downhill instead of sitting back and letting defensive tackles and edges just jump at you. It's a mentality thing for the offense, right? Same with your running back. Also, too, it's a clock management situation like you talked about, trying to take time off when you're up. So I mean, you can keep going on and on why the run is necessary, and like we just used with the stats what you alluded to there too. I mean, they got away from it. Now on the other side, Kevin Byard talked this week and they talked about the Lions run game. He stated Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are one of the best, if not the best, backfields in the league. Everything begins with stopping the run game. I wholeheartedly believe that. I mean, this might be something we talk about later in the show, but what are your thoughts on, like Byard said, with that tandem of Sonic and Knuckles over there in Detroit?
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how that all plays out because the Lions are coming off a game where they didn't run the ball very well against Green Bay.
Nope.
And I believe that at least on paper, the Bears have a better group of defensive tackles than the Packers do. I mean, I don't think that their edge rushers are nearly as good as what Green Bay has, but at the same time, I think that there's, talent there. And if TJ Edwards does come back, then that should be a nice addition for the, at linebacker at the second level, maybe clean up a little bit more tackles in that area. I think that's going to be key too, because obviously, you can commit to, we need to stop the run. I think the main focus is, can we win in the trenches, specifically along the interior? Because that's where the Lions showed that they struggled against Green Bay. And I think that if Gervon Dexter can, rush the passer properly and generate some nice pressure, if Andrew Billings, Grady Jarrett, if they can contribute up the middle as well, then I think they'd be a lot better off. So I think that that's going to be key for them, is making sure that the defensive tackles do their job, making sure that they can, they can 2-gap properly, make sure they can hold their own at the point of attack and, eat up gaps. And then naturally, I do think that, stopping the run should be a key for Chicago, because, I mean, you're looking at it. Jalen Johnson's expected to come back from injury. We'll see on Kyler Gordon, but I feel like that in itself should help the secondary. The passing attack, I feel like Jared Goff's going to be able to do decent no matter what. But I definitely think that stopping the run is going to be key for Chicago. I think there's a path for them to do it. Just remains to be seen if they can execute on it.
Yeah, exactly like you said. I definitely think there's more depth and more pop for the Bears defensive line. I don't know how you felt necessarily about it, but I thought Noah Sewell in the run game was at least active, if not, and effective, but definitely issue-wise for him was more in the pass coverage. I mean, that was rough throughout the game. But that being said, TJ Edwards, hopefully he's back. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get to training room roundup. But he, was seen. Has a more likely to play this week than he was last week. Really had no chance last week with that hamstring injury he was dealing with. Last bit of news here before we move on. Ben Johnson talked about the hand-to-hand relationship of Caleb Williams' accuracy and footwork. When he was doing it properly, the ball came out on time, and I thought he was delivering accurate footballs, but it's not 100% all the time, and that's something that we were working through. Caleb Williams also talked about this, believes some of his off-throw targets came in spurts due to issues with footwork, and even on throws where his feet were clean, not being hesitant is critical, Williams specifically said. I think that's always something that quarterbacks need to have in their mind, and something I always try to have, in my mind, is be decisive. The decisiveness always wins. When you start being hesitant and things like that, you start missing passes and easy passes that you feel that you don't typically miss. Definitely a couple of footwork issues, but I thought overall his body work in week one, footwork wise, was better than it was last year. And so, like, the mechanic thing wasn't even necessarily my issue last week. More that secondary part that Caleb talked about, the decisiveness, right? You could see when you looked back at the film, his eyes were in the right place, but it wasn't. It seemed like he didn't trust what he saw. He wasn't reading the keys and saying, "Okay, I got to throw this with anticipation, waiting for it to come open." So therefore, a lot of those he'd miss that window, move on, and then all of a sudden, either we're in the check down or worse. So in terms of transitioning this into that Lions game, I think it's good that both Ben and Caleb are on the same page on this. We did not see that a lot in the last regime in terms of being on page. So I'd imagine this is something that gets cleaned up a little bit going into week 2.
Yeah, no, it definitely should be. I think that you hit the nail on the head, and definitely footwork wasn't all that consistent. And even if Caleb made the decisions to make a lot of the right throws, it seems like a lot of them either were inaccurate or they're just delivered a split second too late, where he kind of hesitated and maybe was a little bit late getting the ball out. So, and that's another thing too. That's another hurdle that some of these young quarterbacks can have issues with coming into the league. I mean, especially in Caleb's case, it's a new offense. It's a new, playbook that he's working with. It's his, including college, it's his third playbook that he's had to learn. He's had to know in 3 years. So he's had a lot being thrown at him, and I don't expect things to be perfect. I'll admit I did expect things to be better than they ended up being on Monday night. But at the same time, I still think that there was enough on tape with Caleb to show confidence. I mean, especially in the first half, but even later in the game, he had a handful of throws that were really encouraging where, you see the zip on the ball, you see the velocity, you see the flashes of placement, and that provides some, that provides something to be excited for.
Absolutely. All right. Training room roundup. This is just where we're going to discuss some of the injuries. After all, I have to flex my muscle as a physical therapist somehow. We're going to talk about some of the players for both the Bears and the Lions. So starting with the DMPs, both Kyler Gordon and Grady Jarrett. Between the two, I would expect Grady Jarrett more likely to play. It wasn't anything that he missed time for at the end of week 1. Knee also, too, when you're talking more likely joint, that's something that is more manageable, especially with snaps, right? If you have Kyler Gordon out there, I mean, he's playing 90+% of snaps versus Grady Jarrett, you can do a rotation. So you could have him active, maybe play a lower percentage of snaps. And I think that would honestly be a good thing. The Bears starting defensive line played a hefty number of snaps in week 1. And I do wonder if that contributes to a little bit of the fatigue and a little bit of the issues with that defense giving up more points in that fourth quarter than they did earlier in the game. So depending on your depth would be helpful. But with Kyler Gordon, soft tissue issue, something he's had recurrently, I would be surprised if he plays this week. Between those two, who would you be the most remiss at missing in their entirety?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Kyler plays a more important role in the Bears defense, but for the same reasons that you mentioned, I think Grady Jarrett's more likely to play just because realistically at a defensive tackle, you're rotating that a little bit more. You're not expecting as prominent of a snap by snap role. Whereas with Kyler, I mean, you have, you're in nickel formation, you're in dime formation the majority of the time these days. So you're pretty consistently having him in there. And if he's hurt, then you need to make sure that you're playing it safe with him. So while I will say that having a healthy Kyler Gordon would be more beneficial, in my opinion, I do think that Grady Jarrett will be more likely to play. So that's something where, and I agree with that too, where Kyler shouldn't be forced to play unless, he's in they truly feel decent enough about his status. And with him being, a do not participate at this stage, that probably doesn't bode super well for him in week 2. So we'll have to see, obviously, but that's just where I stand on it. Real quick, I hear my dog was yapping in the other room. He wants to be let out. So I will be back in like 20 seconds. because I don't want to hear. I don't know if it comes through on the camera or on the audio or anything, but I don't want to have that just like in the background. So I will be right back.
Go do your thing. All right, Jacob's going to be right back. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about those two players that we were just talking about there. The other layer to it too is when you look at who's behind, right? So if let's say we're going completionist here, let's say Gray Jarrett couldn't play, or let's say Kyler Gordon's not going to play, either one. If Gray Jarrett doesn't play, Jacob had mentioned you have Jaquan Dexter, you have Andrew Billings, who can be there in the middle. Your depth pieces there, right, with Chris Williams and even potentially Shamar Turner. We have not really seen him, so we can't necessarily rely on him at this point. But at least having him as an option, and you can rotate that. Even to an extent, too, you do have some flexibility with your line. One of the things that they talked about with both Dio Dangbo, but they also talked about that with Shamar Turner, is their ability to potentially, play inside, play a little bit of outside. So you have options versus you flip that the other way with Kyler Gordon. The Bears secondary actually played pretty well. Obviously, JJ McCarthy last week, JJ McCarthy had a really rough 2-3 quarters of that football game, and then was able to find it at the very end there. But in that sense, right, you had individuals step up in a big way with Jalen Johnson out. Nashawn Wright, obviously with his pick six, but overall played pretty well. Now, on the other hand, Nick McLeod last week looked a bit rough and was directly scored on. So if you miss Kyler Gordon, that not having to go to Nick McLeod is a big deal. If you miss Grady Jarrett, you can survive that. But flipping down to some of the limited participants here, TJ Edwards with that hamstring, Josh Blackwell with a groin, Roshan Johnson with a foot, Jade Walker with an ankle, DJ Moore and Jalen Johnson both full. So really good news. DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson should be back. I know that DJ was checked for a concussion after that hit he had later in the game, and then was feeling a little bit messed up after that hit as well in the abdomen groin area. Jalen obviously did not play week one, but should 99% sure here play in week two. And then you have that mishmash of the limiteds, right? Having TJ Edwards, we alluded to this earlier, would be fantastic just in terms of how instinctual he is and how important he is to getting the call in and the conversations that are had there. Josh Blackwell is important on special teams. Jade Walker was able to earn a role on this team for that same reason. And then you have the curious case of Roshan Johnson, right? And the question I would have with that is, and going back to kind of the Ben Johnson of it all, like we talked about at the beginning, let's say we flipped it and Kamanungai had been the one who was hurt and Roshan could have played. Would we have seen a heavier lean on your running back too? Right. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Jacob, and how important Roshan being back would be to advancing this run game out of honestly how kind of rough it was in week one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the roles were reversed and Monangai was hurt and Roshan was in, I do think that you'd see a lot more of the running back too. And I mean, like you mentioned earlier in the show, Swift put on a heavy workload. He was the only true running back to have any carries for Chicago on Monday night, which I get the sense isn't going to be their ideal plan for the rest of the season.
That's just not his role. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. And I think that it should be helpful too if you do get Roshan back. I mean, I'm hopeful that he could play. Obviously, I'm not there and I can't see like exactly how he's, how his injury recovery is progressing. But the way I look at it is, a lot of his work's going to be done in between the tackles. A lot of his work is going to be done in a rotation. It's a sort of similar situation to, you say like a Grady Jarrett where he's going to be rotating a lot. So he doesn't need to play 80, 90% of snaps. If Roshan can play like 30% of snaps, I think that'd be good. So I think that that's something that I'm going to be looking out for, is to see if Roshan can come back, because I think that, like I said, I think he's better in between the tackles and more decisive and aggressive. And, DeAndre Swift obviously is better in space. He's the better athlete overall. But I think that having a different type of running back that you can like rely on, like, a little bit more of what Roshan is in the NFL than what you do with Kyle Monangai at this stage. So I think that having someone where, you know what you're getting yourself into, I think that's something that could be very valuable for Chicago's backfield. So Out of the limited guys, even though TJ Edwards, I'd argue, would have the biggest role out of those 4 limited participants, I kind of want to see Roshan play the most. And that's the one that I'm pulling for the most, just because, I think that I'm sure Ben Johnson would agree. I don't know if he'd say it publicly, but I don't think that, every single backfield carry should be going to DeAndre Swift. So I think that it'd be curious to see maybe Roshan develops into a, like a Jamal Williams type where, he's not the splash player, but, he runs the ball up the middle and he's their go-to in short yardage situations. So he's the one. I mean, obviously I hope that all of them recover, but I think that the most important, at least going into week 2, would probably be Roshan out of that bunch.
And I'm not trying to make more of him than he is. I mean, obviously I really liked Roshan coming out of college. I mean, I kind of thought there was the whole overshadowed by Bijan, could actually be a pretty solid running back in the NFL. Injuries have been his biggest thing, and that's why we're talking about him right now. But when you look at him in like last year, 2024, he barely really got to run the ball. He had 55 attempts the entire year. So when you look at him on, like, for example, Next Gen Sports, he's not there because he didn't have enough carries. And that wasn't that was an injury thing. That was a usage thing because he was really used for short yardage only and a couple other instances. But he actually had a success percentage, according to Pro Football Reference, of 56.4% last year. That's, rushing gains at least 40% of yards required on first down, 60% required on second down, 100% on third, fourth down. So when you've handed him the ball more often than not, technically by 56%, he was successful. And that's not the case for running backs across the league. So yeah, again, don't want to make more of him than it is, but it's a type of runner that you didn't have in week 1, or at least potentially maybe one that Ben wanted to trust in week 1. We do have to flip over to the line side. There's a couple of things to talk about over there. Biggest one, did not participate, is Taylor Decker. Their offensive tackle currently is nursing a shoulder issue. No specifics on what that might be. It could just be, right at this point, similar to what we talked about with Grady Jarrett, management. Hey, we know you're good. We know you don't need the practice. We're going to just save you for Sunday. But if Taylor Decker couldn't go as their starting left tackle, I mean, you have Giovanni Manu stepping in. I don't know who that guy is. Never heard of him before, actually. And I think I know a good number of people here. But I mean, that would be huge.
No, absolutely. And I think that, obviously Taylor Decker's been a mainstay on that Detroit offensive line for the entire time he's been there. I think he came in like 2016 or something like that out of Ohio State. So, and he's been a really good starter for a majority of that. So that'd be something huge too, where, the Vikings didn't have Christian Darrisaw in week 1. So then having the Lions not having Taylor Decker would be beneficial too for Chicago's pass rush, which, I believe at this stage, until they prove otherwise, I believe that they could use all the help that they can get. So, it's helpful to potentially have a little bit more luck bouncing in their direction with this. Like you said, so Giovanni Manu, he was interesting. So he was college teammates with Theo Benedette at British Columbia, and he was the one who ended up getting drafted, and Benedette didn't. I thought that Benedette was a little bit more polished, but Manu he's like 335 pounds or something like that. He's an incredible athlete, but he's pretty raw at this stage. So if, we'll see if Decker does play, then obviously I think that that's something that, that'll be a little bit of a hurdle that the Lions are going to have to overcome. But, if for whatever reason Decker doesn't play, I think that could be very beneficial for Chicago.
Yeah, more likely than not, he is playing, but you never know. But so really the only other one to highlight that I would say, and there's other names on here, but the only other one, Terrion Arnold left the Lions game last week with an injury. He was a full participant today, didn't participate yesterday. So he's going to play, but he's already had a couple of things that have last year and then obviously now this year that have had to leave games. So even though he's playing and even though he was full, does he get banged up again? He's had some holding issues and things like that. He's a very physical player, but when you're not feeling 100%, right, do you all of a sudden lean a little bit even more so on being physical in the handsiness, drawing? And so that's just something to keep an eye on. But yeah, everyone else that really, really matters is going to be playing for this Lions team.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Detroit, at least mentally, how they bounce back from that loss to Green Bay. Because I mean, the Packers had a lot of momentum going into that, obviously with the Micah Parsons trade, but I think that uh, the Lions' offense definitely wasn't nearly as explosive as they probably wanted it to be. I mean, their run game was very inefficient. Jared Goff didn't necessarily light the world on fire either through the air, and the interior offensive line in Detroit looked like it could be a serious issue. Whether or not it's going to be a serious issue down the stretch when you have Christian Mahogany, Tate Ratledge, guys like that, they're a little bit inexperienced, they're a little bit young, they're both talented, but as they start to ease into that starting role a little bit more, maybe things even out. But I think the Bears have an opportunity to take advantage of that inexperience along the interior. And I mean, I think like Ratledge in particular, I'm interested in because I liked him a lot as a guard coming out of Georgia. But where I look at the power, the tenacity, and the straight line quickness. But keep in mind, if he's playing at center, that's a new position for him. He didn't really play that. To my knowledge, he didn't play that much, if at all, during his time at Georgia. So as he's learning that too, I think that's an opportunity for Chicago's defensive line to take advantage. Whether or not they do, obviously we'll see. But I think it could be another really interesting game. And it's just a matter of, can the Bears bounce back after, blowing that lead against Minnesota?
All right. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of this matchup.
Proper gut health is instrumental to athletic performance and recovery. Our gut is in essence a second brain, and health researchers are continually uncovering new benefits of probiotics, scientifically connecting the dots between gut health, reduced inflammation, and stronger immunity. Kombucha Aid is a tasty, clean label, functional option to easily add probiotics into any athlete's routine. We call it balancing your brains.
Kombucha Aid is a premium performance-focused kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. This revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancements to support energy, hydration, and recovery. Made from organic teas and infused with natural electrolytes, Kombucha Aid offers a delicious and effective solution to maintain peak performance. Better athletic performance, increased nutrient absorption, improved wellness, and improved cognitive stamina. Use code BEARGUTCHECK, that's BEARGUTCHECK, for 15% off your order and balance your brains and improve your athletic performance. All right, knee-jerk reaction. This is just one hot take going into next week. Jacob, what you got?
So this is one I'm kind of going to cheat here because I tweeted this out yesterday, but I did say I think my hot take is that Javon Dexter is going to have 2 sacks against this Detroit Lions offensive line. And that's not me to say, oh, the Bears are going to win this game guaranteed. That's not me going to say, the Bears defense is going to absolutely light up Detroit's offense, but I do see a potential mismatch there. And I watching Dexter in week 1 and, honestly, throughout much of his career, he's been an effective pass rusher along the defensive tackle position. I think that, he still has work to do as a run defender, but I think that you have a guy that quick, you have a guy with, the length, the ability to work off of blocks and stack and shed. I know in the sack that he had against Minnesota, it was just a case of, he's active at the point of attack. JJ climbed the pocket, and then Dexter was there to, stack it, to disengage and then shed the block and make the tackle. So I think that, something similar could be in the works with Dexter. It also had another pressure on top of that during the Minnesota game. So that's going to be my take, because I think Dexter gets multiple sacks. I think that there's, like I said, a potential mismatch. And I think Dexter's really coming into his own as a pass rusher. I keep saying I don't think he's in that top tier of defensive tackles because he's not great against the run. But I think that at the very least you have an interior defensive lineman who can provide pressure and get to the quarterback. And I think that that's a very valuable thing. So I think he's going to have a pretty good game.
Yeah, I know it's kind of a partially serious, partially joke that goes around where people compare, the pressure rates or the sacks between Dexter and Jalen Carter. Obviously, Jalen Carter has 0 stats so far this year because he got kicked out for, hawking a loogie. But like, that's the thing. Dexter doesn't necessarily it doesn't have to be that, and he had a decent year last year. He's already shown he's building on that, and he's showing that if he can continue this trajectory he's on, he's a player that you're probably offering a second contract to and an extension because he plays an important position and he's gotten better year after year.
No, absolutely. And I mean, and we can see like these last couple of years what defensive tackles are making out on the open market, especially the ones who can rush the passer. I think that bodes really well for Dexter when his time comes for an extension. Again, whether or not he propels himself into that true top tier, well, remains to be seen. But I think at the very least right now, you have a quality starting defensive tackle and someone who's young, someone who's athletic, someone who can rush the passer, and he has all the traits of someone that could potentially cash in for a big payday.
Even with that crazy slow get off people were worried about. My knee-jerk reaction is simply that the Lions vibes right now, and I mean from the team, head coaches, and the players, I mean, they're setting up for either domination or a huge disappointment. Dan Campbell is a very obviously an emotional guy, wears his heart in his sleeve, and has not been quiet about the importance of what this is going to be. Ben Johnson talked about this a bit. I mean, not that him and Campbell, text every once in a while. That's still family, but he feels, it's going to be this playoff-like atmosphere to the emotion. You have Lions players talking about how, hey, we have week 2 circled, all that. And I know like Lions fans are in that same boat too. But I mean, there's going to be so much of that raw emotion in Ford Field, and really it's going to be up to the Bears that can they take on that initial wave, right? Because it's just going to be vibrant. They're going to want to, stand up for the players, that is, stand up for their team, their coaches, and whether it's right or wrong with the whole Ben Johnson effect and going to a division rival. But if the Bears can quiet that down, whether it's scoring early, whether it's, obviously stopping the Lions from scoring, and if you can just ride out that initial wave, it's hard to keep that up if you're a Lions team when you put that much into it initially, and that's where all of a sudden you can see that energy and that emotion drop. So that's gonna be a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be tough for Bears fans to hear, especially after the Bears started off strong and then faltered off down the stretch. But I really do think that setting the tone early with an opening touchdown drive or, like a forced fumble or an interception or something like that, I think would be huge for the Bears from an energy, from a momentum perspective. Like you said, especially with the Lions coming off a down game, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen there, how they're going to respond to it. I think that it's, potentially a perfect opportunity for Chicago to, just hit the ground running, be like, all right, forget what happened in that, in that fourth quarter against Minnesota. We're building off of the good things that we had here. And then just pin your ears back and attack, really.
To be perfectly honest, this is something just brutally honest going into this game. For mine, I need Caleb to be more aggressive. According to Next Gen Stats, Caleb had the 4th lowest aggressive throw percent at 5.7%. Now, don't get it twisted. Other individuals that are good quarterbacks were in that area so far this season. Jalen Hurts was led the league, or was the bottom league, I should say, at 4.3%. Patrick Mahomes, even though they didn't win, I mean, it's still Patrick Mahomes at 5.1. Josh Allen at 6.5. So, those are all in your top 5. So that stuff is not always super predictive. And then if you flip the script, in very aggressive throws, I think everyone can agree that overall the Cowboys had a good offensive game. Dak Prescott led the league in aggressive percentage at 26.5. Michael Penix, who had a good game, 26.2%. Now you also had Spencer Rattler at number 3 at 26.1, but the Saints kind of made that a game. I say all that because, if your wide receivers are running wide open and you're hitting them and winning, that's good, right? You're gonna have a low aggressive percentage because your receivers are creating separation. If you're turning down throws and having to scramble, take a sack once in a while, I mean, at that point, that's when you need to trust your arm, trust your keys, trust your playmakers, and be a bit more aggressive on those throws when you're letting the ball go.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, I definitely do want to see Caleb be a little bit more aggressive. I think, it's been kind of echoed through the fan base going into the season where it's like we want to see more interceptions, not because particularly we want to see Caleb make mistakes, but we want to see him trying out deep passes, trying out those big plays. And obviously those aren't going to hit every single time. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about is, the rates are a little bit low, but part of that I think might be because Caleb's been struggling there, even when he did have those opportunities to throw the ball deep. And, even on those intermediate routes, there's some, there's a little bit of there's like a misconnection from I don't, whether it's chemistry or timing or, some footwork in some cases. Caleb hasn't shown, at least in the NFL, that he can consistently hit those plays. So I'd love to try it out. Absolutely. In a game like this, I guess we'll see how it turns out. I think it's going to be too close to the point where, Ben Johnson might want to play it safe and not be like, hey, we're going to, air it out deep with Caleb and see what happens. But at some point this year, I absolutely want to see more of that. I want to, at least see what you have, see what he's made of. And because your offense isn't going to be nearly as explosive if you don't have those big plays. Detroit had such a good offense because they were able to hit the deep ball. Jamison Williams was such a good deep threat there. Sam Laporta was efficient across the middle of the field on the seam. Jahmyr Gibbs can make plays out in the open field. So if I think that's an element that was kind of missing from the Bears in week one, would love to see if they can change that in week two, or if not this week, then, going forward, hopefully.
What was your, to be perfectly honest?
So I was kind of going in a couple different directions here, but the one that I ultimately settled on is I was looking at Drew Dalman a little bit. So when I was setting up my scouting reports that I do on my Patreon, cheap plug, but he wasn't someone that I included. I did cover Darnell Wright. I thought he had a really good performance, all things considered. 2 penalties, but one of them I really think, the phantom holding call
that was crazy.
Yeah, that was wild. He did have a false start on top of that, but the holding call was, I think, a load of BS in my opinion. But anyway, I was going through the offensive line and I was specifically focusing on Darnell Wright for the sake of that scouting report, but I did see Drew Dalman a little bit. And I'll admit, I wish I could see a little bit more. I think that especially for a center that you're paying big money for, he's been tremendous in Atlanta his entire, for a majority of his career there. It was a little bit disappointing to see him look, rather average on week one. That's not to say he was bad particularly, but he didn't stand out as, oh, that's a guy they just paid, what was it, like $13-14 million a year to. So he's someone that I want to see bounce back. I think that, again, he's a really good fit for what the Bears are looking to do in the run game. I'd have to go back and check, but I know it's pretty heavily, like something like 17 of their 20 runs, or however much it ended up being, were zone runs, as opposed to gap. So that, and Dalman's, supposedly in his time with the Falcons proved that he's a very good zone blocking, a zone run blocker. So I think in theory it's a good fit, but it was, I was admittedly a little underwhelmed with what I saw on Sunday or on Monday night. So he's someone that I'm looking forward to, hoping that he rebounds. But yeah, he's someone that I think does need to step up and do a little bit better this coming week.
Yeah, if you look at kind of historically by PFF, and PFF is not the end all be all. I want to say that because there's this seems like a love-hate when it comes to these grades, but especially with offensive linemen, I like to use them as part of the concoction. You go back to even 2023, he graded out 82.3 overall, third among centers, but he graded out 90 as a run blocker and 53 as a pass blocker. 2024 overall 78.8, 79.8 as a run blocker, 66.6 as a pass blocker. So that's always kind of been there for him a little bit, where he's a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. But like you said, though, it was such a pedestrian day for him that you just thought there'd be just a little bit more there. And he's a very smart guy. I mean, when you hear him talk about football and intellectually, he fits that center mold. And there just wasn't that didn't show at all times in the game, like you were saying.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, he's someone where I'm confident that he gets back on track. Again, it's a new offense for everybody. I think that the offensive unit and just football in general, I think, for any team, that it's going to be more tight. It's going to be more precise mid-season or late in the season than it's going to be early on in the year when they're still getting their bearings together. But yeah, he's someone I have confidence he'll, bounce back just because of his track record during his time in Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, that was someone I was a little disappointed with how he performed against Minnesota.
Well, ain't this humorous? Just something we find quirky or funny. This two-layered thing here. According to Next Gen Stats, Olamide Zaccheaus ranked 4th in the NFL in separation, and Rome ranked 12th. So 2 of your top 4 catch options were creating good separation, yet you didn't really feel it that way in terms of production, considering the number of 3-and-outs, lack of scoring that the Bears had, especially in that second half. Another little side note to that, DeAndre Swift had 3 receptions. They all came in the first quarter. So that part tells you that, 1, Caleb was not getting to his checkdowns later in the game. And also, 2, one of the things that DeAndre Swift does best is working in open space. I mean, he's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but if you go to Jahmyr Gibbs last year, right, the Lions used him in a plethora of ways out of the backfield as a pass catcher, not just on checkdowns. And even this last week, I believe he had 10 receptions in the John Morton version of the Lions offense. So I find it a bit funny in a sad way that your 2 of your receivers were in the top 15 in terms of creating separation, and that your dynamic pass catcher was, in terms of a running back, was a bit of a side note, especially when you needed some dynamic plays when the offense was sputtering, and particularly at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarters.
Yeah, and I think that I was definitely encouraged with what I saw from Zaccheaus. I mean, it showed that, obviously he took those snaps with the first team as the primary slot receiver there. And I think, it translated to what his role ended up being in week 1. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Rome, I'll admit, surprises me a little bit. I thought that, when I went back to watch him, I definitely saw some good flashes of, separation, especially against zone, in terms of how he adjusted the tempo of his routes and had a feel for the soft spots around him. But against man, I do think that, the explosiveness out of those breaks were just okay. So I guess more than anything, it speaks to his route running IQ more so than this is a guy who's shifty and who can change direction on a dime, that sort of deal. Excuse me. So I will say the one thing that I found interesting is, I know we go back to PFF not being the end-all be-all. I was also surprised Caleb Williams ended up 13th among the 32 starting NFL quarterbacks in week 1. And I was admittedly pretty shocked by that. I mean, there were a couple players I thought had better performances that, ended up ranking below Caleb. Like, for example, I think Daniel Jones had a very good game with the Colts and their blowout win. I think that it's just going through the list here. He was ahead of guys like Jordan Love, who I think was also pretty solid as well. Brock Purdy looked pretty solid. Michael Penix as well. All those guys were.
He was ahead of number 24 NFC Player of the Week, JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. I mean, and I do think that for the most part, Caleb did outperform JJ, in 3 of those 4 quarters. So yeah. I think that's fair. That was crazy, though, by the way. Him as Player of the Week. I mean, all the power to him. Awesome. But
my favorite was when they had it Josh Allen on Twitter, Josh Allen's numbers and JJ's numbers next to each other. And it was just like, come on, like we're doing this right now.
Yeah, that was crazy. But I don't know. Good on him. He had a really good fourth quarter. But yeah, I just don't see that. But either way, I mean, I think that Caleb, I was a little surprised that he ranked out that high. Granted, that comes in with the caveat that he was, better as a runner than he was as a passer.
Yeah.
as I rank here, Caleb was middle of the road as a passer, and then as a runner, he was fourth behind Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. So that's a pretty good, if there are three guys to be behind, that's pretty good company. But that was something I don't think that the metrics match the eye test for me.
No.
And I think a lot of Bears fans will agree. They were expecting more out of him. I was expecting more out of him. I'm sure you were as well. And that's not to say that he was absolutely terrible, but at the same time, was he truly above average as far as the league goes? I can't say that personally, but I just found that to be interesting.
And I wonder how much too. I mean, it's week one conversation. I mean, there's a lot of guys lower on that list that you would that you would expect to have played better, like Baker Mayfield. I mean, I did not think the Bucs offense would look like it did. And my fantasy team agrees with that. I thought it'd be better. And so like some of it you probably chalk up to a little bit of week one, where maybe some of the people who would normally be above him with how he played also just didn't really hit the ground running per se.
No.
Do you have a Anthus Humorous, or was that it?
Yeah, that was my one. That was my
cool.
one. It's probably just the Caleb's ranking there.
All right. We got another break here, and then we get right back. Your season, your shot. The NFL season is rolling, and every touchdown can bring you closer to a payout with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. From first touchdown score to anytime touchdown props, or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. For example, you can get Roma Dunze at plus 205 as an anytime touchdown scorer, or Caleb Williams at over 220 passing yards. Don't love that? You can adjust his yards to over 200 yards at minus 182. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, score over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code GRIDIRONPOD. That's GRIDIRONPOD to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place your first $5 bet. Plus, over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-3689. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-77 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. NFL Sunday Ticket offer for new subscribers only, and auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Additional NFL Sunday Ticket terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday Ticket/terms. Limited time offer. All right. Back half of the pod here, rolling through some specifics and some pick'ems and some fun stuff here. What you need to know, this is Jacob, where I ask you some questions and you give us your raw, unfiltered take on this. I did not send Jacob these ahead of time, so this is just off the dome. Trying to remove bias when it comes to the season as a whole, who is this game more important for?
I'd say the Lions, honestly. I think that, this is obviously a very important game for the Bears. I think that starting off 0-2, especially with 2 losses within the division, isn't ideal. But I think that the Lions have higher expectations than the Bears going into this season. And I think that an 0-2 start, especially an 0-2 start within the division, I think would be, I don't want to say catastrophic, but it would be a pretty big deal for them, especially given where their, aspirations are and where the hype is expecting them to be. I think the Bears, if the Bears come away with an 8-9 or 9-8 season, then I think fans would be like, okay, yeah, that's fair. But if the Lions fall short of winning the division, I think that that's going to be a disappointment for them. And that's naturally going to be more regression. So I think that the Bears, as a little bit more of an up and coming team compared to Detroit, they have a little bit more leeway, a little bit more flexibility to work with. So I think this game is more important for the Lions. I think it's important for both of them, really. just given the fact of how week one ended up for both those teams. But yeah, I'd lean the Lions a little bit just because the bar's higher naturally because they've won the division the last 2 years.
And then you also add in, and I totally agree with you, I think it's the Lions. You add in the fact that the following week in week 3, they go to the Ravens Monday Night Football. You get games against the Browns, who I don't know what to make of the Browns right now because the Bengals barely beat them. So take that with a grain of salt. But then it's Browns, Bengals, Chiefs, Bucks, right? I mean, that's not an easy slate of games. Right now, the NFC North as a whole is playing some pretty tough ones. But, if you drop the ball here against the Bears because they are the favorite, there's a lot coming at them. And like you said, they have bigger aspirations. Now, that being said, the Lions could pull in Eagles, right? I mean, the Eagles had a great year. Then they lose 2 of their coordinators. They are not very good. And then all of a sudden they get new coordinators in Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore, and they're a Super Bowl team. So even if this year was a down one for them, it's not the end of the world. But, and the NFL is a fickle mistress, one could say. And as you start to lose, every year you lose that, it's just one more missed opportunity, and it's hard to get back. Dan Campbell said as much. It's hard to get back to these games. Next question. Lions got shellacked last week against the Packers. We've been alluding to this. We talked about this. Is that who they are in 2025, or is it a week 1 blip?
I think it's a week 1 blip. I mean, I look at that roster. I think it's too talented to get, handily controlled in NFC North divisional play, even as strong as that division is. I think they'll pick things up. It might take a little bit of time. Again, with such turnover in the coaching staff, I think naturally that's, bound to happen as, you bring it in because it's similar playbooks, it's similar philosophies, but it's not exactly the same thing. So I think that, that lack of stability is, it definitely hurt the Lions, I believe, in week 1. So I think they'll still be a playoff team. I still think they'll be a good team. Maybe they take a step back, but at the same time, I mean, I think that a team that's that talented with, with a roster that's been built that effectively, I don't think that's going to be them every week. I mean, if it is, then that's great for the Bears. I mean, because that, helps the playoff chances and it helps the divisional standing. But at the same time, I think that I can't get my hopes up that high that that's what the Lions are going to be, every week going forward.
Agreed. I mean, for those of you who watched that Packers-Lions game, I mean, the Packers came out firing. Now, they scored quickly, too. And then, look, David Montgomery had 25 yards on 11 carries. Jahmyr Gibbs had 19 on 9 carries. So as a team, they averaged 2.1 carries per game. Amon-Ra St. Brown only had 4 catches for 6 targets. You looked at Sam Laporta, he only had 6 receptions for the day. It just wasn't a normal Lion, like how the Lions like to operate. If you looked at Jared Goff's stat line, I mean, 31 for 39, 225 yards, and you caught it there, you'd be like, okay, solid game. He just also happened to only have one touchdown, and he had that interception at the end of the half that stops them from getting at least 3 points there, potentially a touchdown. So, if they got 3 out of that and they got the ball in the second half, that could have been a very different feeling from a 5 of that game. But so I agree with you.
Yeah.
Definitely more of a blip, weird week 1. Packers feeling themselves with Micah Parsons on the team, that whole shenanigans. Who is the most important player for the Lions, not named Jared Goff, and for the Bears, not named Caleb Williams?
So for the Lions, I think it's tough, but I'm going to go with Aiden Hutchinson for that one because I think that if you have that quality pass rush, I know the Bears – the pass protection was better than I was expecting it to be, particularly along the perimeter at both tackle spots. I think they did a pretty good job with that against a talented Minnesota edge rushing group. But at the same time, I do think Hutchinson is better than either Grenard or Van Ginkel, which that's saying a lot because both of those are very talented players. And I think that Hutchinson, if the Bears' offense is to get going, I think that key for them is going to be shutting out Hutchinson, making sure that they, if it's not working out one-on-one, if Darnell Wright's having some issues, if Braxton Jones is having some issues, then, designing some opportunities. Okay, maybe we're going to chip block him here with Cole Kmet or Colston Loveland. Maybe we'll have these bunch formations, and whoever our slot receiver is going to be on this play is going to have a chip block before he, goes out for his route. I think that would be huge. So Hutchinson's someone that I'm going to be watching. Obviously, I think that, him coming off the injury, he had an incredible year last year before he got hurt. And just in general, he's a very talented player. So I think that stopping him would be huge for the Bears offense because, Caleb, I think that he did pretty well outside of structure, all things considered. But, to that same rate, you want him to be as comfortable as possible. So I'm going to go with Aiden Hutchinson as my X factor source for the Lions.
And what after you get past Aiden Hutchinson, and this was a talk all offseason and previously to that, it's just not a lot there. It's more of death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. You have on the opposite side Marcus Davenport, who's not bad, but he's not great. Their interior is definitely more of a run-stopping interior than it is a pass rush interior with DJ Reader. I like Tyleik Williams, but again, more as a run stopper than a pass rusher. Roy Lopez, same thing. He was someone that I was hoping the Bears could get maybe cheap on the interior this past offseason. He signed with the Lions, but just a big body that can eat up space kind of a thing. Not like Andrew Billings necessarily, but, same kind of role for the most part. So if you, like you're talking about, if you can negate Aiden Hutchinson, I think you're having a much easier day. All right, moving on to our love it, hate it, rehabilitate it. This is something that a matchup, specific dynamic we love for the Bears, one we hate, and one that if we were the coach, we'd focus on rehabilitating. My love is the Bears offensive scheme. And this isn't a direct one, obviously, but Bears offensive scheme versus the Lions offensive scheme, right? You throw Ben Johnson and John Morton into a ring, in a knife fight. I'm going to take Ben Johnson kind of thing. And there's not a lot of data with it being week 2 so far, but there's nothing to me showing that John Morton is anything more than RC Cola to Ben Johnson's Coke.
Yeah, and I'm with you there too. Because I'll admit I didn't do a ton of research into John Morton, but it's my understanding he was an offensive coordinator previously in the NFL. If I'm getting that right, at some point a long time ago, as I checked out with the Jets in 2017. So that was a 1-year stint. Obviously, a lot can change between now and then, but going off of week 1, it wasn't necessarily encouraging, coming out of how they performed against Green Bay. So I'm with you too. I think that Ben Johnson, at least from a play calling perspective, from an offensive, scheme perspective, I think that that's an advantage the Bears do have. Mine is very quick. So if you don't mind, I can just, jump through mine because I know I've touched on it a little bit. I think it's the Bears defensive tackles versus the Lions interior offensive line. And it was my bold prediction, Dexter's going to get 2 sacks, but even then, I think you get Billings in there. Chris Williams, I know, is in the rotation as well. Grady Jarrett, if he plays, I think, that they're all going to get playing time and they all have potential to take advantage of a rather inexperienced group. So that's the one I'd go with that's a matchup that I think is beneficial for the Bears, but I'm with you for sure too that the offensive play calling, the Bears have the advantage on that end.
Hey, keep going. What do you hate for the Bears?
So I am a little bit worried about this Lions skill positions against the Bears secondary. I think that obviously it remains to be seen. If my guess right now, as not at all a medical expert, I think Jalen Johnson will play, but Kyler Gordon won't. Maybe Kyler does play, who knows? But even then, I think Jalen, he's a very talented cornerback, also one who's going to be, coming off an injury that sidelined him for a long time. Maybe there's a little bit of rust there. So then outside of him, it's going to be Tyreek Stevenson and Nick McLeod. And I don't know I have my worries personally about that group as far as, can they shut down Amon-Ra St. Brown? Can they shut down Jamison Williams? Can, I think the safeties can do decent enough against Sam Laporta and the linebackers maybe as well. But I think that, in particular, the receiver position is going to be a little bit difficult. So that's a matchup that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of for the Bears.
I mean, mine's similar. I mean, mine's actually the Lions running backs versus the Bears linebackers, and whatever you would need to have to figure out to do with, at nickel, potentially if you're having Kyler do a little bit of that. Jameer Gibbs out of the backfield as a receiver is scary. He had 10 receptions for 31 yards last game, so they're clearly getting him the ball out of the backfield. Tremaine Edmonds is not known for his ability to cover and lack of instincts. And then you have Edwards, who is known more so for that, a little better at it, but he is coming off the injury. So I think Jameer Gibbs is going to be a problem, and Dave Montgomery always seems to find another gear when running against the Bears. So I think that might be a bit tough this week. Rehabilitate, I'll just keep going. It's the run game. Per Next Gen Stats, Chicago had a 17.6% success rate on running back runs. No other team in week one was below 22.7%. So basically, it was horrendous. It was awful. Part of that is DeAndre Swift is just not a between the tackles runner. For whatever reason, Ben Johnson, as he said straight up himself, forgot Monangai could, in fact, take a handoff. Like, that was within the rules of football. And so you just really couldn't get anything going in that respect. And you didn't really see too many outside runs, surprisingly enough. If they were outside ones, it was a little bit more of Swift bouncing it. So you really have to work on that. Some of it was also scheme based, I think, when you look back at the tape. Some of the the run fits that, not run fits, some of the blocks that they were asking some of their linemen to make were tough. There were some reach blocks. There were some pulls that were like, I cannot believe you're asking them to block that person. So I think a little bit of it has been also understanding, hey, I don't have Frank Ragnow and some of these other individuals that he had back in Detroit, that this is the offensive line he has, and play a little bit more to their strengths. And also, hopefully, with Roshan back, because the running back room is a running back room. We can cry about it all we want to in terms of personnel. You got to maximize what you got. So hopefully they can work on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that one a lot too. I mean, like I said earlier, I really do hope that Roshan's able to play. That'd be a huge benefit for Chicago's backfield. I'm going to stay on offense for my rehabilitate it, but I'm going to go with the passing attack in particular. I think that you look at the Lions. I mean, DJ Reed's a very talented cornerback. Terrion Arnold is very talented. Rookie year had some ups and downs, and, he's battling through injury right now. I think that's a potential advantage that you can, leverage properly. Watching over the wide receivers, the Bears passing attack in week one, I definitely think that they did a solid job of working what they were going against in, the sense that, the Vikings, when they did run zone, the receivers seemed to have a solid idea of how to work themselves open against it. But again, for one reason or another, the timing just wasn't there, whether it was chemistry between the QB and the receivers, whether it was footwork from Caleb. There were flashes, but it wasn't nearly as consistent as it needs to be. So that's going to be one that I'm looking at. I think the Lions have a better cornerback room than the Vikings. Definitely a better secondary when you factor in how good the Lions safeties are. But I think the cornerbacks in particular, I think the Bears, it'll be a little bit tougher, but I still think that they're going to be able to get open. I still think that, the guys the Bears have can separate against the guys the Lions have. And then, whenever the Lions play a little bit more passively, I think the Bears receivers know how to work themselves open. So it's just a matter of, can Caleb hit those throws, and can he identify them right on time?
X factor for the Lions. Mine is establish the run. I just said some stats that the Lions were pretty terrible at last week for a variety of reasons. So most of it probably being line and play caller, but the Vikings rushed for 116 net yards on 25 carries, 4.6 yards per carry in week one against the Bears. 81 of those were in the second half. And the Bears' second and third level run fits were horrendous. They were just awful. The linebackers, I mean, Sewell, for example, was fine. He was admirable, but you're making a tackle, but the tackle is still 5 yards downfield kind of thing. The safeties were not feeling well. Brisker was not doing what he normally does in terms of making contact as close to the line as he normally does. Byard, not really known for that, also was a problem. I know another good example of this was that J.J. McCarthy touchdown run where Tremaine Edmonds I think he moved 2 square feet that entire run. It was just awful. And JJ's a good athlete. He's not that good of an athlete. That's nuts. So if the Lions can do that, they have a good chance in this game, if not a great chance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you on that one. That's the exact same X factor that I had. I think that, especially when you go back and watch that, the Bears-Vikings game, the Bears had the lead, but the Vikings stayed true to the run game, in the second half. And I think that you saw Jordan Mason in particular did a solid job of getting past, getting to that second level. And like you said, the Bears were getting tackles, but the depth of tackle was a little bit too deep. So you definitely want to see the linebackers improve in terms of how they creep up near the line of scrimmage, in terms of how they execute on their run fits. So yeah, I'll cheat a little bit, but that's the same one that I had as well. I think that especially with the Lions coming off of a bad game running the ball, it's uncharacteristic of what they've had when Gibbs and Montgomery has been the running back tandem. But I think that like I keep saying, I think the Bears' interior defensive line is better now than Green Bay's after they traded Kenny Clark. But it's just a matter now of can the linebackers hold up well closer to the line of scrimmage. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
What was your X factor for the Bears?
So this kind of played into my the rehabilitated as well, but I think the passing attack I think is going to be huge for the Bears. I have a lot of respect for the Lions safety tandem of Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. I think that even more so than Minnesota, I think Detroit's going to be capable of taking advantage of inaccurate throws. And because Minnesota going into that game, the secondary is probably the biggest weakness on their roster. They had a question mark at quarterback. I like JJ McCarthy, but again, it's his first career start. You never really know what you're getting with him yet. But I look at the passing attack as, okay, if Caleb's accurate, I think they should be fine. If he can work on his footwork and get more comfortable going through his dropbacks, especially in those play action calls that have him go under center. I think that's something that could be huge for him. It could be huge for the Bears offense, but at the same time, if he's errant with some of his throws like he was against the Vikings, I think the Lions are going to be better equipped to potentially pick some of those passes off. And I think it's one thing if you're taking a deep shot, and truly, risking it all, so to speak. But it's one thing as well if, you're hitting a target on the seam and just outright overthrowing guys. I think the Lions are going to be that's not something you can get away with nearly as much against Detroit secondary. One, because the corners are better, but most importantly, because the safeties are going to make you pay for it.
That's a really good one. I mean, mine was, I kind of had two of them. The one for me is keep head in the count is what I was going to go with. And you saw that early-ish where you were getting into 2nd and 7, 2nd and 6s, which opens that playbook up and, it's a little bit easier. But then when you started to get to, because of some of it was penalties, a lot of those chalking up are now all of a sudden, you get a penalty on first, you get some of the yards back, but now you're looking at 2nd and 12. There's just was way too often that you didn't have that 3rd and manageable, and you were punting, or that you got moved out of field goal range as another one. So that was mine at least. Over unders. Basically, this is over unders presented by DraftKings of the North. We're going to throw some stuff at you. You pick over and under, and if you want to give a reason, great. If you don't, then we'll move on to the next one.
Oh, yeah.
I have Chicago Bears non-quarterback rushes, 20.5.
Huh. Let's see. I'm going to go under. I think that, yeah, it's close. I think that's, really on that borderline, but I think that, especially with Roshan, you still don't know if he's going to play or not. I lean towards under, and then, the Bears try and utilize Caleb a little bit more on, bootlegs or maybe not so much design quarterback runs, but bootlegs where they know that he's going to be on the move and has the opportunity to take off if he wants to.
All right. That's a good one. We're now going to go with Lions sacks, 2.5.
Huh. Okay. I'm going to go over. I think it's going to be 3. I think especially when you have a guy like Aiden Hutchinson there, he's someone who's going to disrupt a game. Whether or not he gets a sack, I think he's going to, get a lot of attention, and then that could provide opportunities for the Lions to, get to the quarterback. I'd love to be wrong. I could definitely see a world where I am wrong on that end, especially because I don't think, like you were saying earlier, outside of Aiden Hutchinson, I don't think the Lions pass rush is amazing, at least from a personnel perspective. But I think that, there's a possibility that, someone on the Bears offensive line slips up. Seeing how the Bears interior offensive line performed, there's a little bit of, inconsistency there. So I'm going to say it's going to be 3 sacks. Again, would love to be wrong. I'd be okay with 2 sacks. I'd be ecstatic if it's 1 or less.
Caleb Williams completion percentage, 65%.
I'm going to go over.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to go over for this one. And I know I think he was right at 60.
Right at 60.
In the Vikings game. I'm going to go over for Caleb Williams. I don't think he's going to hit like 75% of his targets, but I do think that, it's another week. It's another, it's more reps working in the system, working, these in these in-game situations. I think he'll be better. That's not to say I think he'll be flawless, because I definitely don't. But I'm going to go over with that. I think that's maybe a little optimistic, but that's what I'm going with.
Last one to pick them. Targets. Cole Kmet, Colson Loveland.
Ooh, okay. This is I'm going to go Kmet. I'm going to go Kmet for targets. I know you didn't ask this part. I'd say Colson Loveland for yards.
Okay.
But for targets, I'd say Cole Kmet.
All right. We're going to move on to our Bear gut check. This is where we're going to use our feelings, revitalized by kombucha, of course, to give our game predictions. We're also going to check on the giveaway winner for the Bare Bones hat, because that is something that I promised we would do. Boop. All right. So to make sure this is all kosher and I'm not cheating, I'm going to pick a winner. I'm going to pick 2 winners. So the first winner, you're the one that gets the hat. The second winner, if the first winner doesn't claim it, then it's yours. That doesn't count. Second City Gridiron does not get to win a hat. So we're going to do that again. Snoop Vaughn with the sweet poop emoji. You win the hat. I'm going to save this to the clipboard real quick. And then again, I'm going to do a second one real fast, just in case Snoop Vaughn doesn't claim this. I'm going to try to shoot you a DM, Snoop. You will get it. So the secondary winner will be Body. I have no idea what that profile picture is, Body Boy _ but if Snoop does not claim the hat, it is all yours. So I will get that bought and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Thank you for everyone that participated. We'll do more of these giveaways in the future, because it's a pretty dope hat, and I want everyone, as many people as possible, to have it. Jacob, where's your post-game swag giveaway?
So I don't know. So I've been thinking about that. I mean, I don't even have a logo for my post game show yet. I have a friend who's into like logo design. I've been trying to coordinate something there. So if I can figure that out, then that'd be fantastic. I also might just do a like a gray t-shirt like this that's designed to look like super sweaty and gross. And it just says Jacob Infante on the front of it. I think that would be pretty good branding, but we'll see. I know there's, obviously Second City Gridiron. We've got some pretty good merch. Maybe a little biased, but I think that there's some good stuff out there. So, congratulations to Snoop Von Poop. Awesome work for you. But yeah, no, we'll the Wrap It Up merch hopefully should be coming in the next couple weeks or months, no pun intended.
Besides the obvious cheating that I assume Lester was doing, trying to get a Bare Bones hat, having Second City Gridiron pop up there somehow, it's something special that Snoop Von Poop won when you were on the show, Jacob. There's just kismet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful that that's out of all the possible shows or possible guests that that guy could have won this. Could have won the hat. I'm grateful that I was the one to experience it, and I think it's kind of fitting. So I really appreciate that.
All right, last thing here, like I said, bear gut check. These are our lines. So we'll start, of course, with this game. Most of these I got yesterday, so if they've changed, I didn't have time today. It was a whole thing at work. So anyway, deal with these lines from yesterday. This one is updated, at least from this early afternoon. Bears at Lions. So it was 5.5. Now the Lions are favored by 6. What do you got, Jacob?
So I'd take the Bears plus 6.5. I'd take the Lions money line, but I think it's another situation where the Bears are talented enough to play Detroit tough. I mean, they played them tough last year too, with I think a worse roster and a worse coaching staff, and especially with the Lions coming off of a down performance. I mean, I think that that's an opportunity where the Bears could really keep it close. I mean, like I said, if I were doing just straight up money line, I'd be betting the Lions. But I do think the Bears are going to keep it closer than 6.5 points.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. And people forget, I mean, last year sucked, don't get me wrong. But how many of those games in the NFC North particularly did the Bears – well, I mean, they won the Packers game late in the year, obviously. And then they lost multiple games in the NFC North by 3 points, blocked kick, like overtime, all this crazy stuff. So, they play these teams close, and you're hoping that at this point Ben Johnson can be an X factor, helping Caleb get you over that hurdle. Tonight's game, Commanders at Packers, 3.5. Packers favored. What do you got?
I feel like I should know this real quick. Is that going to be in Washington or is that in Green Bay?
That is in Green Bay.
Okay. All right. So that puts a wrinkle into things. I'll go Green Bay minus 3.5. Here's the thing. I think that Washington might end up with a better record when it's all said and done this year, but I think the Packers are riding high right now. There's a ton of momentum behind that team. The fact that it's at Lambeau, I mean, those guys are, that environment's no joke. I hate to say it, but when I had the chance to attend the Bears-Packers game last year at Lambeau, I got a lot more respect for like the Green Bay community for how they rally around their team. I say a lot more respect because I didn't really have any to begin with, but that softened me up a little bit, seeing them all, like the whole town rally together around them. Like they take it seriously. So that aspect, and then with how well Green Bay played against Detroit, I think was more impressive than how Washington played against the Giants. So we'll see. Maybe that's a week one overreaction on my part, but I'm taking Green Bay here.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my pre-season feels where I think the Commanders are due for a bit of a regression. Some of their stuff is crazy. Fourth down conversion percentage, their deep ball percentage, some of these things that have really low repeatability rates, was really high in reasons they won games. They won a bunch of one-score games last year. They have the oldest roster in the league. They have the oldest starting lineup in the league. They had, all of those things. And that's not as a Commanders hater or anything like that. That's just hard. That's just really hard. And you still don't have Terry McLaurin at like kind of 100%. He's still getting into game shape. I think we saw that in that game against the Giants. He wasn't Terry of last year. So I think it's going to take a couple weeks for him to get there. And the Packers are just riding high right now. A lot of momentum. LaFleur is a boss. Jordan Love is playing well, even though PFF didn't like him that much apparently. And the energy from Micah Parsons is real right now. I mean, it's the Khalil Mack thing. I mean, how great, even though the Bears lost that first game, but I mean, I think every Bears fan who saw that game remembers how they felt when he had, ran the ball almost all the way back or back to that touchdown, and the juice it gave them and really what it gave the season. So I expect the Packers to have unfortunately, a season like what the Bears had in 2018, if not probably with a better ending than a cake I shall not talk about. We got Giants at Cowboys. I picked this one because the Bears will be playing the Cowboys next. Cowboys are favored by 5.5.
See, that's tough because I think the Cowboys, they performed pretty well, all things considered, against the Eagles. I mean,
they really could have won that game.
They really could have. I'll go with the Cowboys on that end. You said minus 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go with that. I don't know. I think the Giants are They're
They're
cheap.
not good.
They're
Not
cheeks.
good.
Yeah, Russell Wilson is Russ is cooked. So it's I don't know. I mean, maybe the Giants bounce back in some capacity. I'm still not 100% sold the Cowboys are going to be great, but I think that they showed enough against the Eagles to where it's like, all right, I feel confident that they can handle the Giants. If they perform that competitively against the defending Super Bowl champions, then I think they'll be in good shape.
All right, last two here. This one I picked because the line was funny when I saw it. Patriots at Dolphins. The Dolphins are favored by half a point.
Ooh.
Like, I didn't even think you would do that. I thought you just make it a push at that point, but okay.
Yeah, I can't think of the last time that I've seen that. Give me the Patriots. I think the Dolphins are in a state of chaos right now. Not everything was perfect for the Patriots in week 1, but I'm a Drake May believer. Whether it happens this year or sometime down the line, I think that it's much more talented roster and it's a better coaching staff than with the Patriots have than what they had last year. So I'm going to say the Patriots take advantage of a Dolphins team in turmoil, and they pick up that win.
I mean, turmoil is the perfect way to put it. I mean, that secondary might be the worst secondary in the entire NFL for the Dolphins. I mean, the Packers corners are not that far behind. But that's a whole other conversation. But like between the issues with Tua, Tyreek Hill's got his thing going on now. It's been an investigation going. Just bad vibes in that building. And sometimes that's what it boils down to. And you talked about, I mean, Drake May is a baller. I mean, I had him as my quarterback 1 in the draft class for pretty like 75% of last year until I flipped near the end to Caleb. And they have good players on this team, like you talked about. I mean, yes, you're starting rookies at left tackle, left guard, but you do have Stephon Diggs who still can play. I like Kyle Williams as a rookie. Hunter Henry is a very usable tight end. Travion Henderson is electric. On the defensive side, I mean, Milton Williams was a problem last week. Harold Landry actually looked surprisingly good last week. Robert Spillane is a tackling machine. Not to like make more of this Patriots roster than it is, but it's better than whatever the Dolphins are rolling out over there.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. I'm going to be curious to see how the rest of the year plays out for Miami because, I mean, like you said, that secondary is a mess. Bad vibes. I think you summed it up well. It's just bad vibes over there.
Last one, Chargers at Raiders. Bears have Raiders on the schedule down the road a bit here. Chargers are favored by 3.5 in a Monday night doubleheader.
That one's interesting to me. If it's at Raiders, I'm gonna say the Raiders find a way to get under I'll go Raiders plus 3.5. I think the Chargers just barely scratch away with the win though, like a 1 or 2 point sort of deal where they hit like a last minute field goal. Cameron Dicker. I've got a lot of fantasy stock in him this year, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I think that it's going to be a competitive Raiders team this year. I don't think it's going to be a great team, but I think they're going to play a lot of teams tough. I think Geno Smith they aired the ball out in week 1 and, they picked up the win in that regard. So with it being in Vegas, I think that, they're going to give the Chargers a run for their money. In the end, I think the Chargers are the more talented roster, and obviously Jim Harbaugh is a great coach. Jesse Minter is a really good defensive coordinator. I think they'll be in good shape, but I wouldn't sleep on Vegas though. I think that they're going to play a lot of teams tough this year.
Yeah, I just have a feeling. I mean, Brock Bowers didn't practice today, but I think he's going to play, so I don't know if that really matters. And this is probably a silly reason to make this decision, but I just can't believe in Quentin Johnson after everything we've seen with him. The fact that he had 5 catches and 2 touchdowns in that Chiefs game, I just can't get behind that in terms of, yes, they have a good team. I mean, Labiconki is fantastic. Keenan Allen had 7 catches in that game. Maureen Hampton had a headache of an issue running out of bounds at one point, but overall, still, I mean, one of the few young workhorses, I think, in this league. Yeah. All that being said, I mean, you have a workhorse on the other side on Ashton Jeanty. The offensive line for the Raiders is a big question mark, but yeah, I mean, Geno Smith was born in the darkness of terrible offensive line play. So if someone can do it, he can. And there's just something about the Pete Carroll versus Harbaugh of this all, and I just feel like Pete's going to walk away doing that Pete Carroll little forward bend, trot, fist pump in the air. I got a weird feeling about it. But that's all I got. That's all we got. Thank you, Jacob, for filling in for Danny. I know he had some family stuff he had to take care of. He will be back next week, but it's a pleasure having you on. You bring always a great perspective to the show. So I love what you do when it comes to the draft stuff and obviously what you're doing during the year. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always a pleasure to be on the show. So I appreciate you having me. I'm grateful that I was able to, step in here last minute and, fill in. So, yeah, hopefully at some point down the line, whether it's, later in the regular season or, when draft stuff picks up, definitely we'll run it back for sure.
And where can people find all your stuff? I mean, obviously you're part of, the whole Windy City, Second City, but like, where can people find all the awesome work you're doing?
Yeah. So my written work is at Windy City Gridiron for, the Chicago Bears. I now host the post-game pod over at Second City Gridiron on their YouTube channel. You can, find them on YouTube, Facebook as well. I go live on Twitter and X as well through that. I also do NFL work over at Pro Football and Sports Network. So that's mostly like league-wide stuff. And then, that's more NFL draft work as well. But yeah, and then the last one is my Patreon's patreon.com/Jacob Infante. I just dropped my my scouting reports, the 5 players that I broke down from a tape perspective, their pros and their cons for how they performed in week 1. So it's Caleb Williams. Bear with me while I try to think about it. It's Caleb Williams, Darnell Wright, Montez Sweat, Javon Dexter, and Roma Dunze. So
how'd you grade out Montez in that game? Speaking of,
not particularly high.
Yeah.
I think when I watched that, when I watched the film back, I mean, obviously the physical tools really showed up, but I think there are some instances where, I don't know, I was expecting a little bit more of a pass rushing plan for a guy who's been in the league for that long and who's that big and fast and strong. I just think, some of the consistency wasn't there. I don't know if it was an effort thing. I don't know if it was a processing thing or what exactly was slowing him down a little bit, but I think that there's definitely I don't think he was playing at full speed,
which is a shame because I mean, like he was talked about so glowingly, and he that was parroted across. I know the Athletic Football Show talked about that. Yada yada. I mean, there's a bunch of different places, coaches that talked highly about what this offseason was for Montez, and I mean, so it's a shame that we didn't see that in week 1. If he wasn't 100%, what's going on there? But yeah, that's the show we got. I know I personally had the Bears going 1-1 in the first 2 weeks. I had it flipped, right? Vikings would be a win, Lions a loss. But if you leave week 2 with a win, which is entirely possible, considering what we saw of the Lions this last week, and as Jacob and I talked about for the last hour and 27 minutes, that there were some problems, but there were some good things in week 1 too. The Caleb play was not as bad as people are making it out to be. The offensive line did well. Just you tweak a thing here, tweak a thing there, and you can leave Ford Field with the win. So we appreciate you guys joining us for this. If you're live, that's awesome. Thank you. Go ahead and shoot me a tweet too if you want more of the giveaways, because I don't want to do it if you don't want to do it. But yeah, hopefully everyone has a happy weekend and keep the chin up. It's week 2. Calm down. Everything will be fine. Better.